There were two sides of Jimmy Jong. He was the friend that treated the people around him to expensive trips, and the party boy who entered a bar and bought everyone a shot. The parties at his lake house were legendary, and even though he didn't have an obvious source of income, he was always flaunting his wealth. Zhong told people he got rich from the early days of crypto, but that wasn't the full story. On March 13, 2019, the Athens-Clarke County Police Department received an emergency call from Jimmy Jong. Apparently, a thief had broken into his property by smashing a window, taking all his money, and leaving Zhong in an absolute panic. Zhong told the local police department that he was an investor in cryptocurrency and that he might have just lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in Bitcoin. It was the first crypto case that Athens police worked on, and they struggled to navigate the complex and seedy underworld that came with it. At the time, Bitcoin was still relatively new, not the buzzword it has become, so police had no clue what they were stepping into. But eventually, the police got a lead and ended up seizing a popcorn tin found in Zhong's house. And in that tin was a computer with millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin that Zhong himself had stolen. Months had passed without any leads, and Zhong grew desperate for answers, so he enlisted the help of Robin Martinelli, a private investigator. Martinelli owned her own firm, Martinelli Investigations, where she usually handled cases like cheating spouses and custody disputes. She was no expert in the crypto field, and it was one of her first times handling a case of this nature. But Zhong needed her help, so she took the job. Martinelli's focus was on finding out who broke into Zhong's house the night of the theft and identifying that person. So she studied surveillance footage from Zhong's exterior security camera and found her first potential suspect, a slender man wearing a gray hoodie. Luckily, it wasn't the Slender Man, who's like at least 50% scarier. But the less scary Slender Man, we'll call him Slender Guy, was clearly familiar with the property, and Martinelli was sure he was either one of Zhong's friends or someone who knew about his impressive Bitcoin stash. So Martinelli monitored Zhong's friends to see if she could figure out who Slender Guy was. She followed Zhong's friends around town, put trackers on their cars, monitored their social media accounts, and even performed background checks. Zhong's friends all seemed pretty superficial, and Martinelli was certain they had been taking advantage of him. Zhong refused to believe that anyone in his inner circle would steal from him, but it was no secret that being his friend came with some serious perks. He liked to treat people around him and was known to enter a bar and buy a round of drinks for everyone inside. The University of Georgia alum lived in a modest house near campus, but he liked to make big purchases. When Zhong traveled, he stayed in fancy hotels like the Waldorf Astoria, Plaza, or Ritz-Carlton. He bought clothing from designer stores like Louis Vuitton, Gucci, and Jimmy Choo, and drove around in expensive cars like his Tesla. As well as his off-campus home, he owned a lake house where he kept his jet skis, boats, and an abundance of alcohol. When the Georgia Bulldogs football team made the Rose Bowl in 2018, he flew a group of his friends to LA on a private jet. They stayed in luxury accommodations, and he even gave each of his travel companions up to $10,000 for a shopping spree on Rodeo Drive. We're sure there was at least one guy who was disappointed that there weren't no rodeos. D2 reference. You're welcome, 90s kids. But Zhong didn't have a job. He had invested in Bitcoin when it was in its infancy and mined thousands of coins. His crypto career began in 2009, and by 2019, he was pretty wealthy. And while his generosity and party lifestyle drew people to him, Martinelli grew protective over her client. For years, Zhong struggled to make friends, but by this point, he had money, and that made it easier. Martinelli believed his friendships were one-sided, with Zhong investing money and time into his inner circle, only for his supposed friends to take advantage of him. But the thing was, she believed that she had found the culprit behind the lost Bitcoins. It was someone that Zhong knew, but rather than being happy that Martinelli might have cracked the case, he was upset and didn't believe her. Zhong also didn't give Martinelli the full story about how he acquired so much Bitcoin in the first place, but investigators were working behind the scenes to reveal the true story behind Zhong's fortune. 7 years before Zhong Zhong's 911 call, someone had stolen 50,000 bitcoins from the Silk Road, a site on the dark web. As one of the first crypto marketplaces, the Silk Road was basically eBay, but for illegal stuff. Over the years, as Bitcoin's value grew, the stolen crypto's value had reached $3 billion. Although investigators could track the currency's location on the blockchain, a public ledger of all transactions, they weren't able to see the fund's new owner. So investigators spent years watching the Silk Road hacker move the crypto from one account to another, waiting for the cyber criminal to make a mistake. And finally, he did. The blockchain analytics company Chain Analysis was one of the organizations that worked on the case. It traced the Silk Road Bitcoin's digital wallet and discovered that the hacker moved $800 worth of crypto into a traceable account. Unlike the other places where the cyber thief put the Bitcoin, this institution required account holders to give their real names and addresses. So, what was the account holder's name? Jimmy Jong. 6 months after Zhong's 911 call, the IRS called the Athens-Clarke County Police Department and asked for their help in proving that Zhong was guilty. The IRS Criminal Investigations Department, known as the IRS-CI, contacted Athens-Clarke County Police Department's head of local property and financial crimes, Lieutenant Jody Thompson. They asked Thompson about Zhong since he was familiar with Zhong's report about the home break-in. But this investigation was about a different and much larger scale Bitcoin theft. Thompson partnered with IRS-CI Special Agent Trevor McAleenan and Sean Magruder, the CEO of BlockTrace. The IRS hired BlockTrace for this investigation due to its experience with deciphering complicated blockchain transactions. But before they could get a warrant to search Zhong's property, the three investigators needed to find a way to find more evidence. So, they told Zhong that they were investigating the theft he reported a few months ago and wanted to talk in person. The three men went to Zhong's lake house and pretended to be impressed with the property and asked for a tour under the guise of what seemed like general curiosity. Then, those sneaky sneaks snooped for evidence while Zhong bragged about all his expensive stuff. The officers looked through his closets, tapped on floors, and checked wood paneling to see if they could find secret compartments, like they think Zhong was Batman or something. Then, they asked him about the features of his security system, so he gave a full tutorial of all of its capabilities. You can't help but feel a little bad for this guy, right? He's all excited to show off his stuff to people who seemed interested in him, and they're just collecting evidence. After the tour, the officers asked him to explain how he got into the Bitcoin game in the first place. In 2009, the year Bitcoin was invented, Zhong had been part of a small group of early coders who developed and perfected the technology. Although he was a smaller contributor than others in the group, Zhong helped the early developers find ways to reduce blockchain size. Not wanting to miss an opportunity to impress his new friends, Zhong opened his laptop and let the officers see that he had between $60 and $70 million worth of Bitcoin. This gave Thompson, McAleenan, and Magruder all the information they needed to get a federal search warrant. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay tuned right here for our past release to find out about the bizarre circumstances in the last days of the late Tony Hsieh. McAleenan eventually revealed his true identity as a special agent with the IRS Criminal Investigation Unit, not a local officer who was going to help Zhong recover some stolen crypto. At first, Zhong seemed confused, as though McAleenan was pranking him, but things got serious when law enforcement arrived. Authorities flooded the premises and searched for evidence related to the Silk Road hack. That's when they discovered a popcorn tin with a computer inside that had billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. Sniffer dogs detected electronics in a safe set in concrete beneath some basement floor tiles. Apparently, he was Batman. The safe contained precious metals and stacks of cash, but most importantly, it had actual physical Bitcoins, with the private keys engraved on the coins and a wallet with Bitcoin from the 2012 hack. And just like that, Zhong was arrested. Zhong admitted during his trial that stealing Bitcoin made him feel important. School bullies used to make his life miserable, and he always felt like an outsider until he discovered an online community that needed his computing skills. His attorney, Michael Bachner, argued that the Silk Road hack didn't cost the U.S. government money. In fact, the government might have actually benefited from the time it took to track down Zhong. If he hadn't stolen the goods, the government would have most likely seized them in 2014, as it did with Silk Road's operators operator Ross Ulbricht. At that time, Zhong's coins would have been worth $320 each, bringing the value of his Bitcoin wallet to $14 million. But since authorities didn't track down Zhong's coins until 2019, their value had ballooned to $3 billion. Zhong was worried about what would happen to Chad, his 13-year-old dog, if he went to prison, and asked the judge not to send him to jail. Sadly, Zhong didn't get his wish and received 1 year and 1 month in federal prison. Officials put measures in place to help victims of the hack get their Bitcoin back, but nobody came forward to claim the loot. Most Silk Road users were contraband dealers or involved in other criminal activity, so they probably didn't want to identify themselves to the government. And police never were able to track down the slender guy that stole Zhong's Bitcoin in 2019. He's still out there. Jimmy Jong is pretty far from a hardened criminal. It's tough to really feel bad for the people he stole from. But he would have gotten away with what was nearly a perfect crime had he not been robbed himself and called the police. That, and when Jimmy slipped up the one time transferring a small amount of Bitcoin to an online exchange whom he had given his identity to when he set up an account. Lastly, for those of you wondering, his dog was okay and stayed with a friend. Tony Hsieh became an incredibly rich man by selling his startup, Link Exchange, to Microsoft for $265 million, and his shoe company, Zappos, to Amazon for $1.2 billion. Hsieh was known for his incredible generosity and unusual business practices. And like most incredibly wealthy people, Hsieh grew a cult-like following of yes men and enablers. Hsieh had started out revolutionizing corporate culture, but eventually began self-medicating to deal with his anxiety. But self-medicating never works out, and Hsieh worked his way up to inhaling up to 50 small canisters of laughing gas daily, becoming reclusive and detached from reality. Hsieh became convinced that he was able to download skills directly to his brain, like Neo from the Matrix, and that he had the ability to turn into animals. One day, Hsieh was found on his property, sitting by a lake, totally emaciated, rambling to 90s icon Jewel about hacking sleep, not needing to eat, and having an algorithm for world peace. Inside his mansion, literally hundreds of candles were burning, with wax and dog feces littering the floor, and clear instructions not to clean up either. Obviously, his friend was concerned. When she finally left, Jewel warned the head of security that if Hsieh passed in a huge fire and took everyone in the house with him, they couldn't say they weren't warned. As the founder of Zappos, Tony Hsieh didn't just sell shoes. He transformed the way people shopped and connected with brands. Zappos' motto, create fun and a little weirdness, perfectly stated the values of the company. The offices were a burst of color, creativity, and whimsy. Leading the charge was Tony Hsieh, the embodiment of a special kind of CEO. With an umbrella twirling in hand, dressed in jeans and a Zappos branded t-shirt, he guided visitors through the vibrant workspaces. Under Hsieh's leadership, Zappos' ascent was nothing short of remarkable. Taking the reins soon after its inception, he guided the company from near collapse after the dot-com bust to a billion-dollar acquisition by Amazon in 2009. Jeff Bezos, in a video message to Zappos employees during the acquisition, praised the company's unique culture and brand, emphasizing his commitment to preserving these invaluable assets. Hsieh's impact extended beyond the confines of Zappos. He envisioned a transformation of downtown Las Vegas into a second Silicon Valley, investing $350 million of his own money to infuse the area with creativity and innovation. He aimed to replicate the strange and alternative culture of Burning Man, a festival he frequented each summer. In 2014, Hsieh embarked on an experiment, implementing what he called a holacracy. This radical management structure aimed to decentralize organizations, empower self-managed teams, and eliminate traditional hierarchies. The shift was monumental, replacing bosses with self-management and introducing new rules and titles. With a fortune nearing $1 billion, Hsieh spared no expense in ensuring that every Zappos worker felt valued and cherished. The company allocated millions of dollars annually for extravagant parties, family gatherings, and happy hours, all orchestrated by a dedicated team known as the Fun-gineers. These events transformed Las Vegas nightclubs into circus-like spectacles or immersive movie replicas, showcasing Hsieh's commitment to fostering an atmosphere of fun and excitement. In 2016, Hsieh's path crossed with that of folk singer Jewel, known for her 90s hits Foolish Games and You Were Meant for Me, who had transformed her tumultuous upbringing into a journey of self-discovery and mental health advocacy. Hsieh's connection with Jewel was immediate, leading him to approach her with the unique proposition: develop a program at Zappos that would address stress and mental health, preparing employees for the demands of the holacracy system he had introduced. It became apparent that Hsieh's interest in mental health went beyond Zappos' workforce. Jewel's team recognized that Hsieh himself was grappling with issues of social anxiety and stress management. As the pressures of his skyrocketing fame and responsibilities mounted, Hsieh struggled to navigate his own well-being. He sought solace in an Italian liqueur, Fernet, drinking it throughout the day. Jewel's collaboration with Hsieh extended beyond the workplace. His participation in the program she developed remained indirect. He sought book recommendations about mental health and engaged in deeper discussions on the topic. However, as Jewel delved into more intensive retreats and workshops aimed at addressing personal struggles, Hsieh's presence dwindled. Hsieh's trajectory during the pandemic was marred by a tragic descent. As he embraced a party-centric lifestyle at his new mansion in Park City, Utah, it became a haven for a plethora of guests ranging from actors and artists to government officials. Hsieh's ambitions stretched beyond the ordinary, with a desire to solve world peace driving his interactions. Yet, his wild parties and gatherings also served as a backdrop to his struggle with addiction and deteriorating mental health. These gatherings, characterized by extravagant celebrations, also underscored the widening gap between Hsieh's reputation as a visionary leader and the mounting challenges he faced in his personal life. Hsieh experimented with various illegal substances and pushed his boundaries to the extreme by attempting to forego sleep, oxygen, and even food, resulting in his weight dropping below 100 pounds. The disintegration of his well-being was evident to those close to him, with friends noting things were falling apart. As his health faltered, Hsieh's life took on an almost cult-like dimension, with him being perceived as both a Howard Hughes-like figure and a cult leader. He accumulated properties under the name Pickled Investments, reflecting his lavish lifestyle that included purchasing condos for friends and investing in various businesses, even offering down payments for future meals at local restaurants. Tony Hsieh's personal assistant, Mimi Pham, emerged as a central figure with a controversial role. Pham, often referred to as Hsieh's right-hand person, had become an integral part of his world, overseeing crucial aspects of his life. Initially paid a flat rate of $9,000 per month along with travel expenses, Pham's compensation quickly escalated. By 2020, her pay surged to $30,000 a month, accompanied by a 10% commission on any funds she managed or invested on Hsieh's behalf. This commission spanned an astonishing array of areas, leading to a multi-million-dollar increase in her income over a single year. Pham's influence extended far beyond financial management. She reportedly engaged in an envious feud with another of Hsieh's associates, Susie Bailson, who was also receiving commissions. To counter this, Pham drafted a peculiar contract stipulating that she would be paid $30,000 for every day Bailson spent on Hsieh's property. Beyond questionable financial dealings, Pham allegedly crossed boundaries by monitoring Hsieh against his wishes through a camera installed in his bedroom. This intrusion into his personal space showed a deeper level of control that had manifested. One of the most shocking allegations revolved around Pham's involvement in securing a $10 million contract for documentary projects. The contract purportedly benefited her boyfriend, Roberto Grande, a lawyer. Under the terms, the profits were funneled through a company owned by Pham and Grande, allowing them to take a significant cut. Amidst these challenges, a critical turning point emerged in February 2020 when Hsieh's friends intervened, persuading him to seek help in a rehab facility. This decision was an attempt to break the cycle of his self-destructive behavior, catalyzed in part by his associates in Las Vegas who had been fueling his addictions. Although Hsieh embarked on this journey towards recovery, the aftermath of his rehab stint revealed that his inner demons still held a grip on his psyche. By May, Hsieh had developed delusions of possessing psychic abilities and the capacity to levitate. In an effort to restore his sense of well-being, his close friends organized a therapeutic bus trip to a ranch in Montana. Hsieh boarded the bus wearing nothing but pajama pants and clutching a box of crayons, a stark contrast to his previous self. His transformation was evident in his penchant for conducting meetings clad only in underwear, a behavior he had never exhibited before. Hsieh's vulnerability became evident through his actions during this period. He offered exorbitant sums sums of money to friends for seemingly trivial tasks while under the influence of hallucinogens. The bus ride to Montana unraveled into a nightmarish episode. Hsieh's mind, distorted by the effects of the contraband he'd been taking, led him to believe he was trapped in an active shooter situation, prompting him to physically destroy his beloved tour bus. Even more disturbingly, he proposed a pact to his friends, suggesting that he would set the bus ablaze with everyone inside. As 2020 progressed, Tony Hsieh's life was spiraling into the abyss, marked by a mix of obsessions and manic visions. His downward trajectory reached a disturbing climax as he experimented with various substances and indulged in behaviors that signaled his increasing detachment from reality. Hsieh's addictions had spiraled out of control, and he began inhaling a gas known for producing momentary euphoria. This shift was accompanied by a dangerous fascination with fire, leading him to play with fire and perform risky magic tricks involving candles, even placing them precariously on his bedspread. His room was adorned with over 1,000 candles, and a small fire ring shot flames into the air without restraint. The mansion itself mirrored his tumultuous mental state. When Jewel and her team visited in August, they were confronted with an astonishing sight. The property was in disarray, with hundreds of candles causing wax to drip onto furniture, carpets, and countertops. Hsieh's small terrier mix, Blizzy, had left droppings intertwined with wax throughout the space. Signs explicitly instructed visitors not to clean up, reflecting Hsieh's unconventional philosophy that discarding trash contributed to environmental harm. The mansion was a reflection of his belief in living in harmony with nature, a sentiment reinforced by leaving showers and sinks running constantly to mimic the sounds of waterfalls. Brightly colored sticky notes replaced electronic communication plastered on walls, glass doors, and windows. The property became a microcosm of his struggles, as even basic amenities were reimagined in bizarre ways. A stream that once flowed naturally was rerouted to the patio, repurposed to serve as a so-called natural dishwasher. The luxury of electricity gave way to an ethereal landscape of hundreds of candles and tiki torches, a spectacle that triggered concerns among local authorities. The nocturnal ambiance was marked by the constant chime of smoke alarms. In the midst of this surreal reality, the mansion bore witness to incidents that reflected Hsieh's escalating instability. In one episode, Hsieh accidentally cut his foot on glass. Instead of tending to his wound, he chose to walk around the house. This gesture seemed to symbolize his quest for connection, even through pain. As his mental and physical health plummeted, the mansion became a battleground for Hsieh's relationships and finances. The Hsieh family's lawsuit indicated that Pham began asserting control over his assets, claiming he was running out of money and imposing the idea of charging rent at his properties with a 10% commission for herself. Even Hsieh's own brother was locked out of his own house, coerced into paying rent against his wishes. Friends and family intervened, pleading with Pham to take action before it was too late. The Hsieh family's lawsuit alleged that a close friend implored Pham, acknowledging that Tony was on the brink of passing away. However, Pham's response was chilling, a dismissal of his impending fate, viewing him as an adult with the autonomy to make his own choices, regardless of the recklessness they entailed. Jewel's visit exposed the extent of Hsieh's deteriorating mental health. She found him outdoors by a small lake, sitting in a lawn chair with only his boxers on. His skeletal appearance was striking as he sat surrounded by many gas canisters he'd been inhaling. In a moment of urgency, Hsieh revealed a box containing a seemingly random series of numbers, which he claimed was an algorithm for achieving world peace, a manic vision that hinted at his distorted mental state. Hsieh's revelations continued. He declared his intent to start a new country and proclaimed that he had hacked sleep, no longer needing it. Jewel recognized that Hsieh's visions weren't merely eccentric ideas. They were cries for help from someone grappling with a severe mental health crisis. At the mansion, Jewel confronted the troubling atmosphere and those around Hsieh who seemed indifferent to his deteriorating condition. She questioned their purpose and their seeming lack of concern. Despite the deplorable state of the property and Hsieh's obvious distress, most individuals around him treated his behavior as normal, a sentiment possibly encouraged by Hsieh himself. He had told his new employees that he was undergoing a creative metamorphosis and that his sobriety would be the final stage. Jewel's parting words to the property's new head of security revealed the gravity of the situation. She warned that if Hsieh's destructive behavior continued unchecked, it would end in disaster. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay tuned right here for our past release to find out how Scott Storch lit $30 million on fire. Tony Hsieh's journey reached an end as he succumbed to injuries sustained in a fire at his residence in New London, Connecticut. On that fateful day, first responders rushed to the scene of a blazing 3-story beachfront home, shrouded in darkness at 3:30 a.m. The residents bore witness to a storage shed where dark smoke emanated, marking the origin of the fire. Within this tumultuous scene, a somber connection to Hsieh's recent struggles emerged. Witnesses told the first responders that Mr. Hsieh was in the shed, prompting a frantic effort to break down the door and quell the flames. The language used by the responders painted a grim picture, one of a man barricaded within. It was a scenario that bore unsettling resonance to the prior warning by Jewel. The fire's aftermath revealed the true extent of the situation. Mr. Hsieh had been rescued from the blaze, with first responders undertaking life-saving efforts as they performed CPR on him. He was subsequently transported to the Connecticut Burn Center in Bridgeport, where his fight for survival continued. Despite the medical team's best efforts, Hsieh's condition deteriorated and he ultimately passed away. When reflecting on Tony Hsieh's final moments, it's crucial to approach them with compassion and empathy. His struggles with addiction, mental health, and the search for meaning had clearly taken a toll on his well-being. We all have at least one person in our lives struggling with one of those things. And as is often the case with the supremely wealthy, they find themselves surrounded by people who are also more interested in what they can get rather than how they can help, like Mimi Pham. Hsieh's breakdown was enabled by the people who were around him, and despite his clear need for help, he never truly got it. He just got stuck with people who only said, "Okay, boss, whatever you want to do." Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comment section what you'd rather have. A job that pays $1 million per year, but you have to work 60 hours a week and it's unfulfilling, or a job that you absolutely love but pays just enough to cover your basic needs.